Alright, what's up guys, this is Jake, and in this video I'm going to be going over the Sense theme. So the Sense theme is a free theme by Shopify, and it's one of the more popular free themes that is suggested to you when you first create your store. And this theme is a bit unique compared to some of the other free themes. It's a lot more visual in terms of like colors and stuff, so I think this will be a good one to go through. So in this video I'm going to be showing you how you can customize the theme, as well as set up some of the unique theme settings that are particular to this specific theme. So with that said, if you're looking to build out your store with the Sense theme, then this is the video for you. Really quick, before we get into the video, if you're looking for a way to set up an affiliate program on your store, be sure to check out the Uppromote app by clicking the link in the description. Uppromote is the most popular solution for creating and managing an affiliate program on Shopify, with over 2,600 reviews. Utilizing affiliate marketing is a great way for you to increase your store traffic and store sales without having to increase your marketing cost, since you are only paying when someone actually purchases from your store. And you are free to choose any amount that you want to pay your affiliates when they refer customers to you, be it a flat rate or a percentage of the sale. You can also give affiliates special gifts and bonuses for hitting certain performance benchmarks. The app is free to install and super easy to set up. You can have an affiliate program up and running in just a couple of minutes. So be sure to check out Uppromote by clicking the link in the description. Alright guys, so let's start out by getting familiar with the Sense theme. So we're taking a look at the theme demo right here. And the first thing you'll notice is that a lot of these colors are very vibrant, and there's shades of different colors inside a lot of these backgrounds here. So we can see that these color schemes are using gradients instead of flat colors. So that's one of the more unique things about this theme, which we'll see once we jump into the theme settings, is they use different types of color schemes than some of the other free themes such as Dawn and Refresh. So you can see here, besides that, the theme itself is relatively simple. We're using standard Shopify templates, such as the heading right here, the featured products, rich text section, multi-section right here. We have the four-way multi-column, and then collections. So this is a pretty standard Shopify layout theme, but what really makes it stand out is the color scheme being used. So in this video, we're going to be putting an emphasis on setting up the colors, because that's going to be one of the biggest differentiators when you're setting up this theme. So overall, this is a pretty unique, very visual theme. So if you're trying to convey a very vibrant look with your brand, then this theme would probably be a good fit for you. So let's go ahead and take a look at what you're going to need before setting up this theme. So there's a couple things that you're going to need. So first off, you want to make sure that you have all of your branding already in place. So it's going to be really hard to go ahead and design and customize a theme if you don't have very simple things, core things for your brand already set up. So you want to make sure you already have like your logo. You want to make sure you already know what your color scheme is going to be. So, you know, the colors in your logo, the colors that you want to associate with your brand. And you want to make sure you have brand photos that you can use for these type of header images and things like that. Along that same notion, you want to make sure that you have your products already set up. So you have products already in your store. In this case, I'm going to be using a demo store here that I used for the Refresh theme video. So I've already got some products set up here. So you want to make sure you already have your products set up. You want to make sure that you already have your collections set up as well with your products. And then you want to also have some extra product photos that you can potentially use to insert into the theme design if necessary. So beyond that, you also just want to make sure you have some of the store basics set up, things like products and collections we just covered, but also you want to make sure you have basic pages set up, as well as your navigation. So if I were to come down the pages, you just want to make sure you have basic things set up, such as terms of service, privacy policy, FAQ, contact, etc. And then your navigation, you want to make sure that you have your navigation set up, because this theme actually does have multiple menu options. So in order to actually preview these menu options properly, you're going to need to have navigation menus set up already. So in this case, on this store, I already have a little drop-down menu set up as well. If you're not familiar with setting up things such as your navigation, your product pages, collection pages, etc., I do have separate videos on all of that as well. So the last thing you want to make sure that you set up before you get into the theme design is going to be a domain name. So if we head to settings and then domain, we'll see that by default, your store is going to have this My Shopify domain name on it. And this is something that you definitely want to make sure you have set up. So you want to set up a professional domain name in place of having the My Shopify domain name, because having this on a live store is not a good look. So if you haven't gotten one yet, I would recommend using a .store domain name. A .store domain name is a good way to let people know right away that your website is an online store that sells products. And another advantage of using a .store domain name is that many more names are actually still available. So if your brand name is a bit more common, it's likely that the .com for it could already be taken. But instead of altering the name, you could just use a .store domain name instead and be able to use the same brand name. You can get a .store domain name directly through Shopify right here, or through other registrars like GoDaddy, or if you go directly to www.get.store and use the code CECOMSTORE, you will be able to get the domain name for 99 cents for your first year. So I'll leave a link in the description for that. So definitely make sure that you have your domain name sorted out before setting up the rest of your store, to ensure that you have a professional online presence once everything with your theme is set up and ready to go. Alright guys, now let's go ahead and jump into the theme customizer and get started with customizing the theme. So I've got it in my theme library right here. So we're going to click on customize and get started. So once this loads up, one thing you'll notice, if you have used Shopify in the past and installed themes, you'll notice that now the themes, instead of coming with a template of a bunch of sections filled in, a lot of these themes now just come with the header and then a featured collection. So it essentially leaves it up to you to add in all of the different sections, which we'll be doing a little bit later in the video. So first off, we're going to start off with the theme settings here. So we're going to come over here to theme settings, and then we're going to open up colors. So if you're familiar with the Dawn theme, Refresh, or some of the other free themes, you'll see that this color section looks a little bit different than the other themes. Instead of having just like a primary accent color, etc., we have different schemes that we can use throughout our store. So let's see where these themes are actually being used so we can get an idea of what's going on, and then we can take a look at editing them. So first off, we can see that scheme 2 is pretty obvious. This one's being used right here. It's being used up here, and it's being used down here as well. So if we were to open up scheme 2, we can see that now we can see the different color swatches, and we can see that by default there is a background color. But then what's being used is this background gradient. So we can see background gradient replaces background where possible. So anytime that we can use this radiant background, that's what we're going to be using instead of this regular background. So you can think of this background as kind of like a fallback option, whereas this is going to be used in the majority of cases, which it's being used in every scenario right here on this homepage. Then we have some other colors that go along with it. So we have the text color, which is obviously this right here. We have the solid button background, so this would be the button color right here. Then we have the button label text, so we can see that that is showing right here. Then we have the outline button and the shadow, and this is going to show up when you have the outline style button instead of the solid button right here. So before we actually change these, let's see what other color schemes are being used throughout the store. So if we take a look at scheme 1 here, we can see that this one's a little bit simpler. So we have this background and we have a linear gradient being used as the background gradient. And we can see that we can't really see any of this on the home page, but where this scheme is actually being used, if we were to open up one of our products here, and unfortunately we're gonna have to open this up again, we can see that this is where it's actually being used right here. So we have the background is being used here on this add to cart button, and then we have the solid button background that's being used on this. So we can test this out really quick. If I were to just change this to like this green, we can see that it changes it right there. So we can see that that's what's being used there. I'll change it back because that doesn't look really good. So we can see that as we look through the store, the primary 2 schemes being used are Scheme 1 and Scheme 2. And if I were to go to the catalog page right here, we'll be able to see which scheme these product cards are using a little bit later. So now I'm going to jump back to the home page and we're going to actually get into editing these colors. So we'll start out with Scheme 2 since the majority of the design elements are using Scheme 2. So one thing that I do want to note is that you don't really have to use all 5 of these if you don't want. And you can see there's also an option to create more, so you can create more or you can use less. You can see right now out of the box, the majority of the theme elements are only using Scheme 1 and Scheme 2. So that's completely fine if you only want to use a couple of these, or if you want to have a lot of different color combination options, then you can use 5, or you can create more additional ones right here. For the sake of this video, we're going to be keeping it as simple as possible, so I'm primarily going to be using Scheme 1 and Scheme 2. So we're going to open up Scheme 2 here, and if we wanted to change the gradient right here, we would need to click on the background gradient. So we can see this is how we can create our own custom gradient right here. So if we open this up, you can see that if you click on the CSS section, this is actually the code for the gradient that we're using. So if you do know CSS, you can custom code the gradient in right here if you think that's easier. But for most people, we're going to be using the editor right here. So we can see there's 2 different types of gradients. So this is the radial gradient, and if I were to click on this, this is a linear gradient. So we can see linear is essentially from top to bottom, and then gradient, and radial gradient rather, is the circular that goes outward, that expands outward. So you can choose which one of these options you prefer when it comes to creating your gradient. And then we can see here, if we go to this color bar, we have the gradient options. So this gradient is essentially using 3 different shades. So that's what these color stops are for. So a color stop is going to represent a different shade inside of the gradient. So we can see we're going from a pink to almost a whitish pink, but very white, and then over here to a lighter shade of green. Copy this real quick, and now I'm going to drag this over. So we're editing this color stop right here on the left. So if I were to drag it all the way over here to the right and make it a dark shade of red, we can see that we're editing this inside color stop right here. And if I were to switch this over to linear, you can see that that would be the bottom color right here, and we can see that showing up down here as well. So I'm going to go back to radial, and we can see that when we're creating our gradients, this is one of the reasons why you need to have all of your branding colors already created, because it's going to play a huge role in actually designing the store. And you want to make sure that you have colors that go together well. You don't just want to pick random colors, so you kind of want to use some sort of color palette. This is something that should be carefully curated when you're creating the branding for your store, is essentially what is the color palette of your brand. So taking a look at these color stops here, we can add or get rid of color stops if we want. So we can see here we have the option to add a color stop, or we can remove it. So if we remove this color stop, we can see now there's only 2, and it simplifies the gradient a little bit. Or we can add one in, and we can see that it's starting out in the center, or we can drag it over, and you can see right here it's getting smaller, or we can drag it over here, and we can see that it makes that color stop get bigger. And we could change the color of this center color stop if we wanted to as well. So if I were to change this to red, you can see that now instead of editing the inside one, we're editing this middle ring here, and I'll change it back so it looks better. And then this one obviously would edit the outer ring. So that's essentially the gist of how you can edit these gradients here. So now that you know how to edit them, you need to actually decide on the colors that you want to use. So in this case, what I'm going to be doing is I'm essentially going to be copying the design from my current store, the current demo store in the refresh theme, and I'm going to be trying to duplicate a similar looking design here on the Sense theme. So I'm going to be using the same color schemes. So what you can do is if you have your brand colors, you can open them up and open up the logos in Photoshop, or you can search Google for image color picker. So you can get these actual hex codes here that you can put in. So I'm going to grab the hex codes from these shades of blue, and this is going to be the gradient I'm going to use. So I'm going to go to the outer one first, and I'm going to make it this dark blue, and then I'll make the inner one this light blue. First, I'll just see what it looks like by removing that second one, and we can see that it actually looks pretty cool just with 2 color stops. Now, you can kind of split test what you want it to look like depending on the look you want. So let's say I want to add in another one here, and let's say I would drag it to, say, 36. And I think it looked a little bit better if we make it a little brighter. So we can see that now this looks pretty good. And this is using my color scheme. Now, one other thing that we'd have to do here after we've edited our gradient is to change our background. So we want our fallback background. So our fallback background is going to be pretty much a color that's similar to the gradient. So in this case, I'll set the fallback background to the darker blue. And we can see that I think the text may look better if we were to change the color. So let's say I open up the text, and let's see what it looks like as white. And we can see that I think in this case, white actually looks a little bit better here. So we could change it to white. And then I could also choose a different color for my buttons. So in this case, what I'll do is I'm going to actually make the buttons a solid black. And then I'm going to make the button label white. And now we can see that this already looks a lot better, and it's very similar to the branding that I already have here on the other store. And I will go ahead and change my outline button to black as well, and I'll change my shadow to black. So that's how we've edited color scheme 2, which on Sense Theme is pretty much going to be the most impactful color scheme there is, because we can see it's pretty much showing up everywhere. And we can see that this secondary background color is what's showing up right here. So now what I'm going to go ahead and do is save these changes, and then I'm going to back out quickly, and now we're going to take a look at editing scheme 1. So while editing scheme 1, we want to make sure that we're actually looking at what we're changing. So I'm going to open up a product right here, and I'm going to go back. So now essentially I just want scheme 1 to match with the rest of our branding. So what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to make the solid button background. I want it to just be a standard shade of blue. And then right here, if we open up this gradient, we can see that right here, this is technically using a gradient, but it's actually a very simple gradient. We can see it's essentially a greenish gray into a yellowish gray. So if we wanted to keep with that theme here, we could actually do like a blue into a darker blue again. So we could do like this blue here and then just drag it way over to the gray. And then for this first color stop, we could do our light blue and then drag it over towards the gray as well. And you'll notice as we edit this that this is actually editing the background of the entire product page here. So this theme really does let you get really visual with the different elements here. But in this case, I'm actually going to just keep that background as the extremely subtle grayish blue. And that's all we're going to do. And I'm going to change our text in here to solid black as well, just so we keep consistent with the rest of our store. And we'll have the outline button be black as well. Our solid button label is going to be pure white. And I'll make the shadow black. So now we've went ahead and customized scheme 1. And we can see that now we've essentially changed the Sense theme to fit really well with the product branding we're using here. And we essentially used 2 different color schemes. So for the sake of this video, I'm only going to primarily be using these 2 color schemes here. However, you can definitely go through and create as many as you need to, like I said before. Now that you know how to create color schemes, I want to actually move beyond that. So I'm going to save these changes, and we're going to finish up here in theme settings. So the next thing we need to do is just add in our logo here. So we're going to go ahead and select an image. So since I already have a logo on this store, I'm just going to add that in right here. And then we can change the logo size so it gets as big as 300. So I'll keep it at max size right here. And then we have our favicon, which is what's going to show up right up here. I don't have a favicon for this particular brand, but I would recommend having a favicon to show up there to replace the Shopify bag. So we can save once we've added our logo in. Then we have typography. So this allows you to change the fonts if you want. So these are the fonts by default. I do think the fonts by default with this theme do look pretty good. They kind of fit with the overall vibrant look. It's a very smooth, clean font. But if you do want to come in here and change your fonts, this is how you can do that. But I'm not going to do that in this video. So the next thing I want to show you in theme settings is the product cards here. So in order to showcase these, we need to open up the catalog. So the product cards are what these products are actually in. So if I open up the product card, we can see styles of card, but if I change it to standard, we'll see that this bit disappears, and it's essentially just this product image, and then the title, and then the price. And then we have the card, which makes it all kind of one piece right here. And we can see here that right now the product card is using the color scheme 1. So for example, if I were to change it to color scheme 2, we can see that it would now change to that gradient background that we've been using throughout the store down here. Now, in my opinion, this is a little bit overkill. So I would stick with color scheme 1, or in this example, you could also switch to a different scheme, such as color scheme 3. And actually, I think what would look good is I'm going to go back to colors real quick, and I'm going to change scheme 3 just to a solid black background. And I think that actually looks pretty good with this color scheme, and it kind of fits with the design here from the refresh theme. So I guess we'll be using 3 different color schemes. So you can see that's an example of where these different color schemes really come into play when setting up the Sense theme. So alongside the product cards right here, the same exact thing is going to factor in for the collection cards. So when you're displaying collections, and then the same exact thing would factor in for the blog cards. So in this case, I would just make all of them the same color scheme. So I'll make the collection cards and the blog cards all scheme 3. And then most of this stuff we don't need to mess with because a lot of it looks good by default. But one more thing we will take a look at here is the cart type. But first I'm going to save. So by default, our cart is a pop-up notification. So we have 3 different types of carts we can use. So we have pop-up notification, we have page, and we have cart drawer. So this is going to be personal preference. So if I were to preview this real quick, we can see we have a cart pop-up right now. So if I were to, let's say, add something to cart, we can see that it pops up right here. And then if you view the cart, it actually takes you to a page. So if I were to change this to just a page, what would happen is when you add something to cart, you would just be sent straight to this page right here. But if I change it to a drawer, this is going to look completely different. So I'm going to change it to a drawer, and we'll refresh this preview. And now if I were to add something to cart, we can see that it shows up here on the side, and then we can go straight from the cart drawer to checkout. And if I were to open up the cart, it opens up the cart like a drawer. So you can choose which type of cart you want to use. That's going to be completely preferential. So that's how you can do that. And then you can choose some other settings, like whether you want to enable a cart note or not. And you can also choose to display a collection when the cart drawer is empty. We can see that's only going to be for cart drawers. So that's pretty much it for the theme settings. You can customize your checkout, but that's pretty much the same for every theme. So I'm not going to go over this in this video, as I already have a video for that. So we're going to save our changes, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to head over to the home page, and we're going to actually get started with editing and creating the actual layout. So one of the first things we can do is actually customize the header itself. And I accidentally skipped by this, which is why you see some of this filled in. So this is going to disappear here in a second. But I wanted to put this earlier in the video because it makes sense to do the header first. So if you click on header here, the main things that we can edit here is the desktop logo position. So right now it's top center. We can make it top left, middle left. So this will put the menu right next to it. Or we can have it middle center. In this case, I'll just keep it as top center. And then we have our main menu showing up here by default. And then we can choose what our desktop menu type is going to be. So right now it is a drop down, which looks like this. Or we could change it to a mega menu here, which would look like this right here. So the mega menu probably wouldn't be the best option for this particular store, because this drop down only has 2 different links and there's no subcategories or anything. But let's say you have like a clothing brand or something, and you have a section here, and then it's like men's, and then it's like shoes, shirts, pants, socks, etc. And then there's a bunch of subcategories within those. That's when you should activate a mega menu. And then we also have the drawer, which we can have on desktop as well, which would click and open up the menu right here. So in this case, I'm going to keep it as a drop down, but depending on the type of links that you have and how many links you have in your main menu, that's going to determine the type of desktop menu you want to use. And then we have the sticky header. So right now it's on scroll up. So if I were to scroll down and then start scrolling up, we can see the menu appears right here. But if I were to change it to always, then the menu would always be visible, or we can choose always but reduce the logo size. So we scroll down, the logo gets a little bit smaller, so it just makes the menu a little bit smaller. Or we could have it as none, so the menu doesn't follow you. I do like to use on scroll up personally, but this comes down to personal preference. And we can always change the color scheme of this menu here to different colors. I'm going to keep it as scheme 1 because I think that looks the best. Then we can change our mobile layout as well. So at any time when we are editing the store, you can come over here, switch to mobile, and you can see what everything looks like on mobile as well. So now we're going to move on to this first image with text right here. All right, so when it comes to editing the home page here, since the template that's given to us is pretty empty, we kind of have to be creative and create our own template. Or what you can do is you can look at other sites and kind of utilize their templates for inspiration. So let's say you could use the demo store and use this for a template right here. So for example, we could create this template really easily for the home page. So if I were to look at this, we can see that this first section is the same. Then there's the featured products. And then down here, there's a rich text. So if I were to add in a rich text section right here, and then we can see that it's using color scheme 1. If we changed it to scheme 2, we can see now that's what this section is. So this section right here is actually a collage. So if I were to add a section in here and click on collage, we can see that we have the collage right here. This next section is a multi-column. So if I were to add that in, and we can change this to 4 columns, and that would end up being the same as this. And then these are 3 different collections being displayed right here, and then an email section that can be added at the bottom, which we already have in this case. And then lastly, we have a collections list. So if I were to add that in right here, we can see that we essentially just duplicated this exact template from the demo store theme here in just a couple of seconds. Now, obviously, you don't have to use the same template if you don't want to, but if you're struggling for inspiration and you just want to use the demo store layout, then you can go ahead and do that. Obviously, you can create whatever sections you want. In this video, I'm actually going to be using a similar layout that I used from Refresh theme here. So at this point, you would just actually have to go in and edit all of these sections. So in order to edit sections, all you have to do is click on one, and then all of the editing is going to come up here on the right. So we're editing this first one right here, and we can see that we can edit things like the image height. So I can make it medium, small, or large. So by default, most things look pretty good by default, but you can come in here and change some of it. We can change the color scheme of this right here. So if I were to change that, we can see it goes to scheme 1, scheme 3, and then we have these other schemes that we didn't edit here. And then we can actually edit the text by clicking on this text right here. And in this case, I would just add in some of the text from the previous site that I had, but I'm going to change, since it's cutting off exceptional, we'll change it to small or large and see which one looks better. So we can see in this case, small definitely looks the best here. So I'll go with small. And then if we click on this button here, we can choose to change the link for our shop now, which in this case we just have shop now. So I'll have shop now, and then we can choose to have this link to a specific product, or we can choose to have this link to our entire collection, which it's doing right now. What we need to do now is actually go back to image with text and put an image in here. So I'm going to go ahead and select an image from the library here. And in this case, I'll just use the same image that I used as my cover image before. And once again, you can choose to change the image height to see what you think looks better. In this case, I'll just keep it with large. And we can see that just like that, we filled out this section right here. And I'll click on save. And then we can go down to the next section here, which in this case is the featured collection, which we can see on this store. I pretty much kept the same, except all I did was change some of the text. So we can see we can change the heading right here by pasting in some text. And then we can choose to make the heading small, medium, or large. But as we can see, I think it looks better small. We can change the collection that it links to. So right now it's actually linking to all products. If I change this collection, I could change it to say just like the homepage collection or any other collections you have right here. I'll change it to just the homepage collection here. You can choose how many columns you want to display. So we could change it to where it displays 2 in a row. But in this case, 4 I think looks pretty good. So we'll stick with that. And we could change our color scheme if we wanted to. But in this case, I'll click save. And then we have this rich text section right here, which in this case, I could use this section right here for this. So in order to edit this, we can see that we can edit the section itself by changing the color scheme, which we've already made it color scheme 2, which I think looks pretty good for these rich text sections. And we can choose whether we want the content to go left, right, or center. I'll keep everything as default. Then we have our heading text right here. So I'll change that to this. I'll make it small here. And then I will copy the information that I had over here, paste that in. We'll keep that as H2. And what I'm actually going to do instead is first I'm going to come down to this button. And I'm going to remove the button because we don't need it in this particular case. But then I'm going to add a block. And I'm going to add another text block. I'm going to drag it up here because I don't want this heading to be this big. I kind of want it to be smaller. So instead what I can do is I can remove this and I can come in and paste this text right here. And I can make this maybe like a heading 5. And we can see that I think we'll go with the heading 4. And we can see that I think this looks a little bit better and it resembles more so what I had set up over here. So we'll click save. You want to make sure you save after every time you edit a section here. Now the next section here is the multimedia collage. And this is going to be an example of where I'm going to differ away from the demo theme template and I'm going to kind of do my own thing. So instead of using a collage, what I'm going to do is remove this section. And I'm going to add in a multi-row. And I'm going to drag this multi-row right up to here. And as you can see, what I'm going to do is I'm essentially going to duplicate what we have right here. You can see we have as many rows as we want. If I just keep adding in rows, and then I can kind of just keep removing them if we've added too many. And essentially what the multi-row is it's just an image with text that alternates between left and right. So it's a very convenient thing to use. And in order to edit it, we can come in here and edit the image height so we can have them be small, medium, or large. In this case, I'm going to actually go with small. You can choose your image width as well. I'll stick with medium on these. And then you can edit your heading size, your text, and your button style right here. And then we can edit the color scheme that's actually being used. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to edit the actual rows. So in order to do that, we just need to select an image here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of copy the design that I have from here. So we'll select the image of the cleanser here. And the first thing we'll notice here is that the image is actually a bit cut off. So if we come back over here to the section itself, we can edit that. If I were to change it to adapt the image, we can see that it makes it a little bit bigger than I'd like it to be. So we can try some different experimentation here. So I could change this to small, but I could also change the width to small. And now we can see that everything is completely visible. So for me, I think that looks a little bit better, but this is going to be up to personal preference depending on what images and stuff you're using in here. And then obviously we can put in our heading, which in this case, I'll just use the product name. And then we can put in the description, which is going to be right here. And then the button is going to be a buy now button. And we can choose our link. I'm going to have it link to this product, of course. We can choose to put a caption up here if we want. In this case, I just won't have a caption at all. And one other thing I want to do is actually come back to this section now, and we can take a look at button style, because we can see the buttons right now are the outline style. If I were to change it to a solid button, now we can see that the buttons are this color, and I think this color button definitely looks better. And you could always test out different color schemes for these sections if you wanted to as well. So this is the container color scheme right here, and then this is the actual color scheme of the whole background section. So in my opinion, this is a bit overkill because we already have this section right here. So in this case, I would just keep them like this. But another thing you could do is actually, yeah, I'll use color scheme 3 here instead, because I think that looks a little bit better and it kind of fits the design that we used here before. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to save these changes, and I'm going to go ahead and fill out these other rows just like we did this. And this is the same process. I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead. So I went ahead and finished up the multi-row section right here with all 3 of these rows. The design is coming along pretty good. And the next section we have is a multi-column, and I'm actually going to use this column right here. And what I'm going to use it for is I'm going to use it for these 4 little highlights about the store here. So multi-columns are good for things like reviews, features, benefits, things like that. So in this case, I'm going to be using it as benefits. So we can edit the multi-column itself, which in this case, I'm going to have it have no title. It's going to be 4 columns. I'm going to change the color scheme to scheme 2. I'm going to have no background right here. And then what I'm going to do is actually edit the columns themselves. So I'm going to open up the first column here, and I'm going to select an image for it, which in this case we'll be using these icons. So I'll open up this icon right here, and the heading will just be all natural ingredients, and I will not use a description at all. And what we'll do is, now that we've inserted this, we'll come back up to the multi-column itself, so we can edit some of this right here. So we're going to change the column alignment here to center, so we can see that already looks better. And then we can change the image from portrait to square to circle. In this case, we'll just have it as adapt to image. We can change the image width from full width to half width, so that makes it smaller, to 1/3 width. So in this case, I think half width definitely looks a lot better for what we are going for right here. So now we'll go ahead and click save. So that's one important thing when it comes to adding things into these sections. Sometimes when you're editing the overarching section right here, you're not going to know what settings you actually want to use until you actually start filling out these subsections. So that's why I always go in here, I fill out the subsection, then I come back and change these settings to see what actually looks the best. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in these other 3 sections right here, and I'm going to skip right ahead to that. So we can see I added in all 4 of these icons here, and now all we have to do is get rid of this button because it's making it look uneven. So if we get rid of the button label text, we can see now this section looks good to go. Now you could give this section a title if you wanted to, like why buy from us. So you could do that if you wanted. In this case, I'm going to just keep it blank. I think it looks cleaner to just have these icons here like that, and then clicking on save. And then we can see here, this last section here is collections. But in this case, on this store, I don't really have many collections. So this is another time where I would override this, and I would come down here to remove this section. And I could add in a video section, just like I have over here, which is about how to apply the products. So I would go ahead and make that the video heading. And this is where you could select a video here. You could either choose a Shopify hosted video, or you can go ahead and choose an embed link. So from a YouTube link or a Vimeo, etc. In this case, I'm not going to actually put in a video link. I'm just going to select the cover image, so that way it looks good here. Look at these different sizes, and we'll stick with the medium heading right here, and then I'll click save. So at this point, we've pretty much added all of these sections to our home page and filled them out. And now all we have to do is customize the footer. All right, so now we're continuing on down to the footer section right here. So we can see by default, we have the email sign up section right here, which can be edited like any other section. So we can obviously edit this text. So it can be like for 25% off, some type of incentive, the usual when it comes to email marketing here. And then we can come down to the footer section itself, and we can actually add some blocks in. So I'm going to add a block, and the first one we'll add in here is a menu. So we can see by default it's showing the footer menu, which we already created earlier, so we don't really have to do anything here. And then we'll add in another block, and this time we'll just add in some text. And what I'll do is I'll make this the contact text from this footer right here. And we can see we have another text section, so we'll add in another block for that, and I'll copy this mission text in. And obviously whatever you put in the footer is going to be personal preference on your end. And lastly, I'll put an image here, and just like this one, I'm going to put in a white version of the logo, which is right here. And we'll make it a little bit bigger here. So this is a good template that you can use to follow for making a footer. So like your footer menu, contact, mission, and some type of logo image, but you can personalize it however you want. So at this point, we're pretty much completely done with the home page. So I'll go ahead and save this right here. And if I were to open this up and click on preview here, we can see that we have completely customized this theme. So if we take a look at it over here, we can see this is the demo store right here. And we can see that we have pretty much customized this theme to make it match our branding colors. It looks good once you set it up to match your colors right here. And potentially looking at it now, one thing you can do to enhance it is I can maybe make these black bits a gradient as well. So maybe like a black to a subtle white or a lighter gray type of variant. But we're going to just keep it as is for the sake of the video. So jumping back to the editor, you can edit all of the other pages the same way. So if we were to open up like the product page, for example, take a look at the default product, we could edit in and customize different sections in here as well. But I do have a completely separate video on making your product page itself highly customized, and it's pretty much the same process for all Shopify 2.0 themes. So we're not going to cover that in this video, but I'll leave that in the description down below. So with that said, that's how you can customize and design the Sense theme inside of Shopify. So if you did enjoy this video and find it helpful, be sure to leave it a thumbs up, subscribe to this channel for more videos, and I will see you guys in another one.